until I dig around it and put manure on it. Would you turn to someone and say, I have lots of manure ready to give to you? You don't have to say that. I wonder if you like the parable of the fig tree, the one that we just heard a moment ago. It's pretty short, sweet. I'm just going to read it again. A man had a fig tree, and he planted it in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it, but he didn't find any fruit. Maybe he was angry. So he said to the man working in the vineyard, "Hey, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and I haven't yet seen any. Cut this fig tree down. Why should it be wasting the soil?" You ever feel like you're wasting some soil? He replied, "Sir, let it alone for 1 more year until I dig around it and put manure on it. If it bears fruit next year, well and good, but if not, fine, you can cut it down." It's a great story. Now, there's a very traditional interpretation of this parable which would say that God is the man who owns the vineyard, and we, the people of God, are the tree. We're the tree. You've heard this interpretation, right? It's traditional. It's a good interpretation. The implication is that we, like the tree, are not bearing good fruit, and so we deserve to be cut down. That the vineyard owner's wrath, that is God's wrath against us, is justified. That we are wasting God's soil. But then Jesus, the gardener, intervenes on behalf of us. In the Book of Common Prayer, when we say the words of the Nicene Creed, we say that Jesus ascended into heaven and is seated on the right hand of the Father, as though the right hand of the Father wants to get up and hit someone, but Jesus is sitting on it, so he won't let God's hand rise up against us. Jesus intervenes and prevents the tree from being cut down immediately and offers some help so that we can become fruit-bearing trees, all that we were meant to be. That's an okay interpretation. I want to try a different way through this story, though, for 2 reasons. One is based on my theology about who God is. We have a theology. We have an understanding of who God is, and it's challenged by this reading. The other reason why I want to reimagine this interpretation is because of my anthropology, my understanding of who we are as human beings. So first, the theology of God. I wonder, do you think that God is wrathful and vengeful, ready to chop us all up into kindling if we don't conform to the Protestant work ethic and produce? What a terrifying deity, with a personality akin to a ruthless slave owner who runs a sugar plantation. Is that who God is for you? Is God Zeus for you? This is not what I believe about God. Second, anthropology, my theology of humanity. I ask you, I wonder, do you think human beings are like worthless, unproductive plants, guilty of not producing fruit and guilty of wasting soil? Is our value in God's eyes based only on what we can produce in this world? What a soul-crushing image of ourselves, with all the thinking capacity of a tree and no intrinsic value of our own. Is this who you think you are? And worse, is this who you think another human being is? This is not what I believe about humanity. I'd rather interpret the parable this morning in a different way. I wonder who else the wrathful vineyard owner could symbolize. These days, I'm tempted to say that he represents billionaires and late-stage at-any-cost capitalists who want to squeeze us for our labor and our income. I don't want to get too wrapped up in politics, but it's interesting to think that again and again we human beings put our trust in billionaires and millionaires as the best people to lead us. You know, Caesar, Julius was pretty rich too. And so were most of the people through human history who led humanity by the sword. Perhaps the wrathful vineyard owner represents a church leader who just wants the congregation to be at more church events and give a little bit more money. I think I heard something about that last week. And doesn't really care about whether the spirituality of the congregation is growing or roots are digging deep into the ground. They just want some fruit. Maybe the wrathful vineyard owner might be Pilate, who we heard in our reading this morning, who is famous for desecrating religious ceremonies in ancient Israel, mixing the blood of the sacrifice with the blood of the martyrs. And then, if we wonder about who the vineyard owner might be, what about the tree? Anyone who knows anything about growing trees or really any kind of plant knows that different trees require different kinds of environments to thrive. For instance, if you plant a weeping willow in the desert, don't expect it to look as nice as a weeping willow in the lower mainland of Vancouver. And you can't grow a banana palm in the Arctic, can you? And anyone who does and goes up to the Arctic to visit it would be a fool to blame that tree for not growing any bananas. It's only a poor gardener who plants a tree in unfamiliar environments and who doesn't care for it and then is disappointed when it doesn't meet their expectation. Helping a tree to survive, to thrive, means taking special care of its environment. And you know, it's the same thing with us human beings, isn't it? We are not all of us thrust into situations or environments where we can thrive, right? Think of those born in Gaza right now, or in eastern Ukraine, or in the Sudan, or in Syria. Think of those who are born on a reserve in Canada. Sometimes we need to replant people from the gardens that they're born in so that they can thrive. And some of us have the funding and the resources to do this for ourselves, to get out of a situation we don't like, and others don't. They're stuck where they have been planted. What if we reimagined human beings not as trees that don't produce fruits, but as plants that need to be put in the correct environment, that need the right manure in their lives? The ability of someone to thrive then changes from being something that requires punishment to achieve something dependent upon the quality of the environment around them, something that might be the responsibility of everyone, which of course leads to the question of the gardener. Jesus, of course, is the great gardener of life, isn't he? Mary meets the gardener. Jesus is our gardener, but is it true that only Jesus can be the gardener in this world? Are we not called Christians? Are we not called those who look like Jesus? Are we all able to take on the role of gardener for others from time to time? I think you know how I'm going to answer. Of course, we are all responsible for taking care of the environment around us, to make sure that it is the kind of environment where different kinds of trees can thrive. We are all responsible for protecting trees that might not yet be in the right environment from wrathful landowners who can only measure someone's value in their productivity. I suppose what I'm saying is that it is both a theological and an anthropological mistake to assume that God is hell-bent on cutting us human beings down and that we are human beings, worthless trees deserving the axe. And it's spiritual malpractice to think that it's only Jesus who has a role in nourishing the lives all around us. I would even suggest it's kind of selfish to just take the fertilizer of Jesus and keep it for ourselves rather than sharing it with those who are around us. Maybe this week we can take some time to consider what God is like, what human beings are like, and where you might be able to offer a bit of your own manure to someone around you. We are all fragile trees, sometimes planted in difficult places by no fault of our own. I wonder who you can be a gardener to. I wonder who you can be Jesus to.